I watched my boss announce my coworker's promotion on a video call while he texted me, working late, like I was his backup generator. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of a team. I was just the engine under someone else's hood. I'm not dramatic by nature. I don't throw coffee mugs. I don't send rage emails, and I don't fantasize about burning offices down. I'm the guy who fixes broken spreadsheets at midnight and still shows up to the 9 a.m. stand-up with a clean shirt and a muted mic. My name's Adam. For 3 years, I was a data analyst in a mid-sized software company. Not the exciting kind of software, no rockets, no AI, no flashy app. Just a B2B platform with enough settings and edge cases to make normal people's eyes glaze over. I knew it inside out. That was my value. I never needed to be the loudest. I just needed to be right. My boss, Miller, loved to say he valued quiet excellence. He'd tap the table with his knuckles and tell us, "Heroes don't need spotlights. They need impact." It sounded deep the first month. After that, it just sounded like an excuse to put loud people in front of clients and quiet people in front of dashboards. When Luke joined the team, I honestly thought he'd make my life easier. He was everything I'm not. Tall, relaxed, always smiling. The kind of guy who can walk into a room late, crack a joke about the traffic, and somehow everybody laughs instead of asking why he's late. He'd done a year of strategy consulting, which is code for knows how to talk in bullet points without saying much. Miller loved him before he even finished his introduction. "Adam's our backbone," Miller told him in that first team meeting. "He knows the product better than anyone. Shadow him for a while. If you want to learn, you stick close to Adam." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. It was a job. The first week, Luke parked his laptop next to mine like a permanent attachment. I walked him through everything. How our event logs worked, the weird quirks of our biggest client's setup, the difference between what the sales deck promised and what the system could actually do. He took notes, asked good questions, and listened more than he spoke. "Man," he said one afternoon, leaning back in his chair, "I don't know how you keep all this in your head." "I don't," I said. "I keep it in documentation." I showed him my folders, templates for recurring reports, pre-written SQL snippets, old decks with comments explaining which numbers had freaked particular clients out, and why. It was years of accumulated scars, organized into neat subdirectories. He whistled, "You're saving my life here." It felt good, honestly. I'm not the type to mentor people, but teaching him made my work feel less invisible. If he understood how fragile some of these systems were, maybe he'd back me up when I pushed for safer rollout schedules. The first weird moment was small enough that I almost missed it. We were on a daily stand-up. Everyone was giving quick updates. Blockers, priorities, that usual half-bored, half-anxious rhythm of people pretending to be busy and indispensable at the same time. When it was Luke's turn, he said, "So, I've been thinking about our alert thresholds for the Orion client. If we tighten the anomaly detection and add a pre-aggregation layer, we can catch the spikes before they hit the dashboard." That was word for word what I'd told him the day before, sitting at this same desk, over this same shared doc. The idea was mine, the phrasing was mine, the concern was mine. He didn't even glance at me. Miller's eyebrows went up. "That's interesting, Luke. I like that kind of proactive thinking." I waited for Luke to say something like, "Yeah, Adam was walking me through it yesterday." Just a sentence. Just a nod. Nothing. My mic was muted. My cursor hovered over the unmute button for a second, then moved away. "It's fine," I told myself. "He's new. He's nervous." He grabbed the sentence that sounded smartest in his head. No big deal. Later, in Slack, he pinged me. "Hey man, Miller loved that idea. Nice one, appreciate you walking me through it." I stared at the message longer than necessary. The cynical part of me wondered why he hadn't said that in the meeting. The tired part of me told the cynical part to shut up. "No problem," I wrote back. "Just make sure we actually implement the thresholds before promising anything." The pattern didn't show up all at once. It came piece by piece, like someone slowly twisting the brightness down on a screen. We had an email thread with a client asking why their monthly report didn't match their own numbers. I spent an hour digging into it, realized they'd changed the way they labeled a key field without telling anyone, and wrote a careful explanation, screenshots, logs, suggested fix, the whole thing. I sent it to Luke first. Here's what I'd tell them. Feel free to tweak. He replied with a thumbs up emoji. 10 minutes later, Miller dropped a message in the main channel. Great job on the explanation, Luke. Exactly the kind of clear client comms I want to see more of. I checked the reply he'd sent. My text, line for line. He'd just removed my greeting and added best Luke at the end. Again, small enough to rationalize away. I told myself I didn't care who hit send as long as the client got the right answer. I told myself Miller knew who'd done the digging. I told myself this was what teamwork looked like in real life. Messy credit, shared output. But a small, sharp part of me was taking notes. The first time I really felt it in my stomach was in a client meeting. It was a quarterly review with our biggest account. These were the people whose logo we put on every internal slide when we wanted to impress a new hire. I'd spent 3 nights cleaning up their data to make sure nothing embarrassing surfaced live. We were all on a video call. Client's VP of Ops, their data person, our sales lead, Miller, Luke, me. I'd built an interactive dashboard so we could walk them through usage, performance, and a few optimization ideas. It was my baby. I knew every chart, every filter, every little hover tooltip. 10 minutes before the meeting, Miller pinged me. You good to run through the numbers if needed? Luke will lead the conversation. Sure, I said out loud to an empty room. Luke will lead. On the call, Miller did introductions, handed the screen share to Luke, and leaned back in his chair like a proud dad at a school play. Luke shared his screen. My dashboard filled it. Same layout, same color choices, same annotations I'd typed at 1:30 a.m. the night before. The only change was the title on the first slide. Prepared by Luke Henderson, Senior Analyst. Thanks everyone for joining, Luke said smoothly. I've put together a view of your last quarter on the platform. Something in my jaw tightened. As he clicked around, he talked in that half-confident, half-rehearsed tone people use when they've practiced with someone else's notes. When the client asked a specific question about an anomaly in week 6, he hesitated, glanced down at what was probably the cheat sheet I'd sent him, and then repeated my explanation almost word for word. Miller smiled. This is exactly what I mean when I talk about ownership, he said. Luke really took point on this one. Great initiative. And Adam, the client's data guy asked politely, I remember you from the last review. Miller gave that practiced manager laugh. Adam's our rock. He keeps a lot of the back end running. Luke's stepping up on the front-facing side. Support, back end, rock. All those words that mean, we like you as long as you stay where we put you. I unmuted for the first time. If there are any deeper technical questions, I said, keeping my voice flat, I can jump in on the specifics. Absolutely, Miller cut in quickly. Adam's great with the details, but Luke's your main contact for strategy going forward. The call moved on. Numbers, charts, polite jokes. On paper, it went well. The client was happy. We got our great work team email afterward. Luke forwarded it to me with, couldn't have done it without you, man. For the rest of the day, I functioned like normal. Tickets, Jira comments, a quick bug fix on a report that was rounding incorrectly. My fingers moved, my brain worked, my mouth said the right words in all the right Slack channels. But that evening, when the office was finally quiet and the cleaning crew's vacuum was humming down the hallway, I sat alone at my desk, staring at my reflection in the dark monitor. For 3 years, I had told myself that being the quiet one was a choice, that if I just kept everything running, someone would eventually notice. Sitting there with Luke's prepared by slides still burned into my retinas, it felt less like a choice and more like a lie I'd been paid to believe. I kept telling myself that the small things didn't matter, that the credit slips, the copy-paste ideas, the way Luke spoke first in meetings, those were just annoyances, not threats. But small things add up. They always do. And the moment you realize it, you're already knee-deep in a pattern someone else built around you. A week after that client meeting, Miller called for a visibility sync. That's manager language for, I want to tell you about your weaknesses while pretending it's coaching. We joined the call. Miller smiled like a man who'd practiced empathy in a mirror. Adam, you know how much I value your work, he started. That sentence always means the opposite of whatever comes next. But we need you to step up on the soft skill side. Luke's really showing leadership lately. Great initiative, great communication. I'd love to see you take more ownership like that. More ownership, more. As if I hadn't already been carrying the architectural equivalent of a dying horse on my back for years. What do you mean specifically? I asked. He hesitated, small but noticeable. Well, Luke's thinking strategically. He's anticipating client needs. He's leaning in. I sat back, letting him talk. Leadership words flowed out of him like he'd just finished a TED Talk on corporate self-delusion. When the call ended, I stared at my notebook. Luke was leading. I was supporting. Miller had quietly flipped our roles, and the scary part was how natural it seemed to him. Things escalated fast after that. Luke started copying not just my wording, but my work structure, my templates, my phrasing. His updates in Jira looked like mine. Same format, same bullet hierarchy. His emails started echoing my tone, my sentence rhythm, even my shorthand. It wasn't admiration, it was replication. The next incident was during a planning meeting for a major launch scheduled at the end of the quarter. We were walking through risk scenarios, dependencies, load testing, the kind of stuff that can tank a client relationship if you miss even one detail. I flagged a critical point. One data pipeline was aging out logs too aggressively, which meant if the rollout misfired, we'd lose diagnostic insight. It was a high-impact risk. I'd already drafted a fix, but it required lead approval. Luke jumped in before I finished. Exactly. That's what I've been saying. We need to adjust retention, or we'll fly blind during rollout. I looked at him, directly, for the first time. When have you been saying that? I asked calmly. He blinked, smiled. You know, in our internal chats, it's come up. It hadn't. He'd learned it from the notes I'd sent him that morning. Miller cut in quickly. Let's not get bogged down in details. Luke, great catch. Adam, can you implement the fix today? Of course. Luke caught it. I implemented it. That night, I stayed 2 hours past sign-off documenting the pipeline properly. Luke posted a message in the team channel at 7:58 p.m. Update. Pipeline stability aligned. Thanks, team. Moving forward with green status. He wrote team. He meant Adam. And Miller reacted exactly the way he wanted. Fantastic initiative, Luke. This is the ownership I'm talking about. I didn't get a single mention. Didn't expect one. The silence was the point. The next morning, something in me tilted. Not snapped. Snapping is emotional. This was colder, cleaner, a shift, like a hinge moving into a new position. Luke asked me to review a client presentation he was preparing. Normally, I would fix it. Tighten logic, clean the numbers, build a narrative. This time I didn't. I answered only what he directly asked. No extra context. No corrections. The difference was immediate. He showed the deck to Miller without my invisible polishing. Miller frowned through half the slides. Some of this data feels off, he said. Did you validate it? Luke's smile faltered. Yeah. I checked some of it. You need to work more closely with Adam on these, Miller said. He knows the details. The irony almost made me laugh. Luke needed my brain, but Miller needed Luke's noise. Over the next week, I pulled back even more. Not out of malice, but out of clarity. I stopped pre-solving problems before they landed on Luke's desk. I stopped quietly fixing his broken SQL queries. I stopped rescuing half-finished reports 5 minutes before meetings, and the gap between how competent he looked and how competent he was started, widening like a crack in concrete. But the moment everything shifted into something irreversible came on a Thursday night. I was finishing documentation for the launch, which Luke had promised to handle but hadn't touched. I checked our shared doc repository out of habit. One folder looked recently modified. I opened it. There it was. The presentation I'd been building for the leadership review, the one showing risk mitigation strategies, system dependencies, backtesting results. The one I hadn't shared with anyone yet. Luke had made a copy. Renamed it Q3 Leadership Overview Draft Luke. Then removed my name from the metadata. I clicked through. He had kept everything, every diagram, every insight, every explanation I'd spent nights refining. He'd shuffled a few sections to look different, but the skeleton was mine. For the first time in a long time, I felt my pulse spike. He wasn't just using my work. He was preparing to present it to leadership as his masterpiece. And then came the message. Miller, 9:46 p.m. Working late? Need you on standby for some prep. Don't want anything slipping through before tomorrow's review? Tomorrow's review, where Luke would be praised again, where Miller would talk about future leaders, where my work would wear someone else's name tag. And right then, right in that moment, alone in the quiet office, I felt something settle in my chest. Not anger, not revenge. Resolve. I typed one sentence in my notes app. If they want ownership, let them own the consequences. The next day would be the beginning of that. But I didn't know yet how spectacularly things would fall apart when I stopped holding everything together. The morning of the leadership review felt unnaturally quiet, like the office was holding its breath. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't excited. I felt steady. Cold, but steady. The kind of calm you get when you finally stop trying to hold, shut a door someone keeps pushing against. Luke arrived later than usual, but with the confidence of a man who'd rehearsed every smile in the bathroom mirror. He carried his laptop under his arm, shooting me a quick, casual grin. "Big day," he said. "Hope you slept." "I did," I answered, which was true. For the first time in weeks, I'd slept deeply. He hesitated just for a second, like he expected me to offer help, reassurance, something. When I didn't, he nodded to himself and walked toward the conference room where Miller was already setting up. At 10 a.m., leadership joined the call. Our VP of Product, the head of client strategy, and 2 senior managers from the European office. These were the people whose opinions reshaped careers. The people Miller desperately wanted to impress. Miller kicked things off with his usual preamble about team excellence and high-scope initiatives. Then he waved at Luke like a show host, introducing the main act. "Luke's been leading our Q3 efforts," Miller said. "I'm excited for him to walk you through our strategic roadmap." Luke shared his screen. My work filled it. The same diagrams, the same dependency flowcharts, the same risk matrix with red, yellow, green tiles I'd built painstakingly from logs and error simulations. He'd changed the fonts and background color, but everything else was mine. He spoke with confidence, but it was the wrong kind, polished on the surface, hollow underneath. Every time he tried to explain a technical decision, he drifted into vague phrasing. "The system does some pre-processing here," or "we handle anomalies through a layered approach." The VP raised an eyebrow. "Luke, can you clarify what triggers the fallback pipeline? Your slide mentions a threshold model." Luke froze. His cursor hovered. He glanced off screen, probably at his own notes, the ones he'd copied without understanding. "Well," he said slowly, "it's adaptive, based on conditions." The VP didn't react. He only said, "Conditions like what?" Luke opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Miller jumped in. "To be fair, this system is pretty complex. I'd still like to hear it from the person leading the initiative." The VP interrupted, and that was the first fracture. Luke stumbled through another sentence. His hand shook slightly on the mouse. Then the next question came, and the next. Each one chipped away a little more of the borrowed competence he'd been wearing like a rented suit. He was failing publicly in front of the only people whose opinions mattered. But that was just the beginning. Right as he reached the final section, the rollout schedule, my stomach tightened, because I knew what came next. I'd seen the underlying launch plans, I'd built the diagnostic models, and I knew exactly how fragile the implementation was after Luke's revisions the night before. The VP narrowed his eyes. "Hold on, you're deploying this tonight?" "Yes," Luke said quickly. "We're confident about stability." Confident. That word hit me like static. The VP frowned. "Who approved the final configuration?" Luke answered. "I did." "Not we. Not the team." "I did." The VP paused, then turned to Miller. "And you signed off on this?" "Of course," Miller said. Luke's demonstrated great ownership. 10 minutes later, the meeting wrapped. Leadership left the call looking unconvinced, but polite enough to move on. Miller muttered something to Luke about tightening narratives, but he looked content. Luke looked shaken, but relieved to have survived. By late afternoon, things felt normal again, until deployment started. At 6:17 p.m., the first alert hit our incident channel. Error spike detected. At 6:21, the pipeline for our largest client stalled. At 6:29, page-out alarms triggered. At 6:31, the client's on-call lead pinged our emergency line. Luke's messages flooded Slack like someone trying to plug leaks with bare hands. "Anyone seeing this? Is this on their end? Adam, can you check logs? Need help ASAP." And then Miller DM'd me. "Working late, right? We need you to jump on a call immediately." There it was again. The assumption, the expectation that my time, my nights, my life were permanently on standby to clean up someone else's mess. I didn't respond immediately, not out of spite, out of principle. I replied only when he added, "Officially adding you to the incident triage." "Please join," he said. Officially. That mattered. The call was already chaos when I joined. Luke was pale, sweating, talking too fast and saying too little. The client team was furious. Their VP's voice kept tightening every time he spoke. "Can someone explain," he asked slowly, "why your fallback pipeline isn't engaging?" Luke tried. He failed. So I spoke. Calmly, factually, without emotion. "Because the trigger thresholds were overwritten yesterday," I said. "The conditions were changed without proper regression testing. The system isn't recognizing the spike." There was silence. The heavy kind. The VP of our company asked, "Who changed the thresholds?" I shared my screen, opened the commit logs, showed the username attached to the change. "According to the audit trail," I said, "the adjustments were pushed by Luke at 7:14 p.m. last night." Luke stammered, I thought it would optimize." "You bypassed the flagged warnings," I continued. "I documented the risks in 3 separate tickets." I opened them, displayed the comments, displayed Luke's dismissive replies, displayed the green approval checkmark with Miller's name on it. The client team didn't yell. They went quiet. Quiet is worse. Finally, their VP said, "We expect a full post-mortem with names." And that was the moment everything collapsed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just inevitably. After we stabilized the system, I stabilized it, with Luke watching helplessly. Our VP asked me to stay on the call. Everyone else dropped. He exhaled. "Adam, I'm going to need every piece of documentation you have. Logs, warnings, anything demonstrating the timeline." "I have it," I said. He nodded once. "Then send it. This won't stop at a post-mortem." I closed my laptop an hour later and sat in the dim light of my apartment. For the first time in my career, I hadn't saved anyone. I'd simply let the system reflect the truth of the people running it. They wanted ownership. Now they had it, and the consequences were just getting started. The post-mortem didn't happen the next day. It happened the next morning at 8 sharp, before most of the office lights were even on. A calendar invite appeared overnight. Mandatory. Incident review. Leadership only. Police. Adam Ward. No Luke. No Miller, at least not initially. That alone told me more than any email could. When I joined the call, the VP's face was already there. Tired but controlled. The head of strategy joined next, then someone from HR, which was new and significant. HR never attends technical reviews unless they're preparing for fallout. Finally, Miller popped in, camera on, smile too tight, eyes flicking nervously across the screen. "Morning, everyone," he said, trying to sound relaxed. "Rough night, huh?" The VP didn't respond. He just said, "Adam, go ahead." I'd expected to feel nervous speaking to three people who essentially controlled the fate of my department. But I didn't. It felt like debugging a system in production. Just facts, sequence, causality. I shared my screen and walked them through the full timeline, the flagged risks, the ignored warnings, the overwritten thresholds, the commit logs, Luke's approvals, the tickets Miller had greenlit without reading. Every step documented, time-stamped, traceable. I didn't editorialize, didn't dramatize, just laid out the truth exactly as the system recorded it. Halfway through, Miller started interrupting. "I mean, Adam, to be fair, some of this is interpretation." "No," said the VP without looking at him. "This is audit data." Miller went silent. By the time I reached the end, the outage, the client escalation, the emergency fix, the call felt heavier than the night before. HR spoke first. "Thank you, Adam. We'll need a copy of all these materials for internal record keeping." "Already shared them," I said. The VP nodded. "Good. We'll handle it from here." There was no anger in his voice, no theatrics, just decision. "Miller," he continued, "you and I will talk separately. Please stay on the call." I was dismissed. I left the meeting, closed my laptop, and sat back in my chair with a long exhale. Not relief. More like the quiet after a storm finally burns off. It didn't take long for the consequences to reach the rest of the team. By Friday, the news started leaking in whispers. Luke had been put on a formal performance plan, not a gentle one, the kind HR uses when they expect someone to fail. According to someone on the engineering team, he'd been removed from all client accounts. His Jira access had been reduced to basic contributor. No more lead anything. Miller fared better, but not by much. He wasn't fired. People like him rarely are. But he was moved away from anything high stakes. Leadership realigned responsibilities, which is corporate language for demotion without using the word. His new role was internal coordination. No clients, no strategic oversight, no influence. By the next Monday, he wasn't sitting in his old office anymore. Someone else had taken his spot. He didn't look at me when we crossed paths in the hallway, not out of anger, more out of something that looked like shame wearing the wrong jacket. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt finished. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. I got an email from the VP, the same one who'd questioned Luke so hard during the review. Subject, quick chat. "Hi, Adam. I'd like to talk about your long-term trajectory. Are you free this afternoon?" I joined the call expecting a polite thank you. Instead, he said, "I've been watching how you operate. You're calm under pressure. You understand the product better than anyone. We need people like you driving decisions, not just executing them. So I want to make you an offer." It wasn't a promotion within my team. It wasn't even within the same department. It was an offer from a different branch of the company. A new division the VP was building, one with leadership that actually valued expertise, higher salary, clearer role, influence aligned with responsibility. No Luke, no Miller. He ended with, "You don't need to answer now, but I hope you'll consider it." I considered it for exactly 30 seconds. "Yes," I said, "I'm in." The transition took a month. I worked cleanly, documented everything, handed off tasks properly. No drama, no victory laps. Luke left the company quietly during that period. His PIP ended the way most do. HR exit meeting, badge turned in, laptop collected. I didn't attend the goodbye, if there even was one. Miller stayed, but his presence shrank like air leaking from a balloon. He stopped calling unnecessary sinks, stopped walking with the cocky swagger of someone protected by volume instead of competence. He didn't speak to me again, though once, passing each other in the hallway, he opened his mouth like he meant to apologize. He didn't, and that was fine. I didn't need anything from him anymore. On my last day in the old department, I cleared my desk slowly, not because I was sentimental, but because for the first time since joining the company, I felt like I was walking out of a room exactly as myself, not as the shadow behind someone else's spotlight. As I left, I got a Slack message from someone I barely knew in engineering. Heard you're moving teams. Good. Some of us have been watching a long time. You deserved better. I stared at the message longer than necessary. Not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me of something important. People notice more than you think, even when they don't say it. My new role started the following Monday. Different office, different team, different energy. My new manager introduced me in a meeting and said, "This is Adam. He's here because he saved a launch that should never have needed saving, and because he knows how to think 3 steps ahead." He said it calmly, matter-of-factly. He said my name. The work was challenging but clean. No hidden knives, no stolen credit. When I built something, people saw it. When I raised a concern, they listened. When I said no, they accepted it. On my second week, I opened my laptop early one morning and glanced at the corner, where late-night messages normally filled my screen. Nothing. Just the quiet of a system functioning the way it should. That quiet felt like the first real promotion I'd ever had. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for a message from a boss asking if I was working late. I was working on my own terms, and that made all the difference.